Doing well, sir. Doing well.
Oh, thank you so much for agreeing to.
Next to a swimming pool.
Thank you so much for agreeing to talk to us today.
It's a pleasure, mate. Very glad that the film's finding an audience with you.
Definitely. Well, Richard, look, it is an absolutely fantastic film, and I've got to say congratulations. And I just wanted to start off by asking a little bit about what drew you to this film. What made you decide to bring this story to life on the big screen?
I've been a massive fan of Lovecraft's work all my life, and I've been stealing ideas from him ever since I was a child. So I figured it was important to repay the debt and make an official Lovecraft movie. I would love to have had his name on the actual title, like Bram Stoker's Dracula. It should have been H.P. Lovecraft's Color Out of Space. So I did want to tip my hat to the guy. Over the years as a fan, I've been really disappointed by the lack of decent adaptations of the main stories. I wish that Del Toro had done At the Mountains of Madness, or James Wan had done Call of Cthulhu. So I figured it was about time that somebody did an official adaptation of one of the central stories. Color Out of Space is really the low-hanging fruit of the bunch, because it's set on a single farm and involves a single family being destroyed by the ultra-dimensional threat. So I figured at least we don't have to go on location to Mars or to the bottom of the Mariana Trench. It's something that we could potentially access on a low to medium budget, which is, I guess, why the story presented itself.
Yeah, I understand that your mother was actually a huge fan of Lovecraft as well, and that's where you started to read his work as well. Can you tell us a little bit about that bond between your mother and the work of Lovecraft?
Well, my mother was an anthropologist and also a graphic artist in the 1960s and 70s, so she was drawing a lot of very weird and trippy stuff herself. I think she had been an admirer of Lovecraft's work ever since she was a child herself. She started me on his more fantastical material. I think she read to me from a story called The Dream Quest of Unknown Cada when I was about 7 years old. So there are quite a few of the Lovecraft stories that, strangely enough, are kind of suitable for children. That inevitably led me on to harder things. So by the time I was 13, I'd read all of the stories and had gotten involved in the role-playing games and was thoroughly conversant with the whole mythos that surrounds it.
How young were you when you first read the story behind Color Out of Space, and what was it about that story, apart from the budgetary reasons for the film, that made you decide that was the Lovecraft story that you wanted to turn into film?
I think the first time that the thought of trying to shoot the thing as a movie occurred to me when I was about 13 years old. So I must have read the story around 12 or 11 or 12, somewhere around there. But when I was first mucking around with a Super 8 camera, I tried adapting the story into some kind of script, but then rapidly abandoned it because it was obviously too complicated. It must have come into my consciousness very early on. It's partly because the story is a little bit more approachable from an amateur or low budget point of view, but it's also because of the backward setting, the remote forests of Lovecraft's fictional Arkham County, which was always a location that drew me.
And tell us a little bit about how it came about in the last few years, because I think it was about 2013 where the talk first started surfacing that you were going to make this movie. So tell us a little bit about the steps from then to where you got to today with the film.
Well, like most things in the film business, there's always a cubic centimeter of chance. There's always an element of luck. I came up with a screenplay for Color Out of Space with my co-writer that I was pretty happy with, and spent a few years shopping it around and trying to find a production partner or cast members willing to come aboard. And it was really a stroke of luck that the
Yeah.
The first I heard about it was I got a phone call from some guy claiming to be Nick Cage in a bar in Nevada, which came through to my home in France at about 2 in the morning. Was him claiming that he was apparently making my movie.
Okay.
Which I didn't really believe. I remember waking up the next day thinking, did that really happen? And getting on with my life. And it was really only until a couple of months before shooting started when Josh Waller and one of the Portuguese producers drove up to where I was living in the south of France and banged on my door in the early hours of the morning. And I remember I fixed them a coffee and they told me to get in the car. And I kind of realized at that point that we were indeed making the movie and that we had 6 weeks to prepare it.
Wow. When you first started working on the screenplay, was Nicolas Cage someone that you'd considered for the role? Because I know he was linked to Dust Devil back in the 90s, but was he someone you had in mind for this role when you actually sat down to write the screenplay?
At the beginning, I was thinking about getting an actor who, ideally someone who was not known for being crazy on screen. Some part of me wanted to cast someone who would be the last person you would expect to lose their shot and become a danger to their kids. So I think when we were first writing it, I vaguely had Hugh Grant in the back of my mind. And once Nick came aboard, it became obvious that he was a perfect fit for the material. But we would just have to calibrate it very, very carefully to make certain that the craziness, when it does erupt, evolves organically out of the material to essentially keep Nick deliberately on a leash or dialed back for the first half of the movie.
How do you go about doing that as a director? Because Nicolas Cage is such a great character actor. How do you actually go about reining him in and saying, like, not quite now, or wait a little bit for that? How do you actually go about doing that?
Well, the great thing is Nick is has so many different personas, and that apart from being an amazing surreal comedian when he needs to be, he's also a fantastic romantic actor. He was once a great romantic lead in a bunch of Oscar-worthy movies. So instead, for the first half, particularly with the scenes with Jolie, playing his wife who is recovering from cancer in the film, Nick was able to tap into, I think, his sensitive side and bring out some of the pathos we would expect from him. We were joking on set about giving the whole range of human emotions and directing by numbers, so that you kind of start off at about 1 or 2, but then eventually go all the way up to 10.
Yeah, we shouldn't forget about the rest of the cast as well, because the rest of the cast have done such an amazing performance. How did you go about finding people like Madeline Arthur for their roles? Because the entire cast puts in such an amazing performance here.
Madeline Arthur was particularly saved our asses in that we couldn't find anyone who wanted to play Lavinia at first, the daughter of the family. It was tricky because the characters mostly have such downbeat arcs. The only way out of a Lovecraft story is generally death or madness. So there's not a lot of there's not really a positive learning experience or a positive emotional growth to be had from the arcs taken by the family members, who generally end up mutated, getting dragged down wells, and just terrible things happen to all of them. So it took a while to get some of those parts aboard. Particularly the ladies. Jolie had to talk with me for quite a long time over Skype before being able to get a handle on it, because the demands of her part were particularly rough. But Madeline, literally, we didn't get until about 3 days before we started principal photography. We were right down the line and still hadn't cast the pivotal role of Lavinia, the daughter of the family. I felt like the lead guy in King Kong was about to sail for Skull Island with no lead lady. I was practically ready to go ashore and try and find the first teenager and 3 days' time. So it was a tight state of affairs. And then when we did get Maddie, she came straight in from Canada and literally went from the airport straight into a rehearsal with Nick Cage and Jolie and the rest of them. And then we fitted her for wardrobe during the rehearsal, and then sent her from the rehearsal for writing lessons with the horse master, even before she reached her hotel room. So full kudos to Maddie Arthur for coming into that situation and making such a great fist of it.
Wow. And here in Australia, there's been a lot of talk about Tommy Chong being in the film as well. Tell us a little bit about how you got Tommy into the film, and had you always been a huge fan of his as well?
Yeah, like a lot of folk, I've loved Cheech and Chong all my life. As a teenager, spent a lot of time listening to their albums back in South Africa. So I've been missing him as a screen presence as well over the last many years.
Okay.
So it was an opportunity really to tip my hat to him.
Yeah. Now, you shot the film in Portugal. Tell us a little bit about that decision to shoot the film there, and what was the actual set like to work on?
Well, at face value, that was the location was probably the biggest challenge facing us on Colour Out of Space. This was mostly because Mr. Cage was only available for a 4-week window, starting from the last week of January 2019, right in the dead heart of winter here in the Northern Hemisphere, which meant we couldn't shoot in the real world of Massachusetts or New England, which was under heavy snow. Even Savannah, Georgia was under snow at that point in time. And same deal for Northern Ireland, Belgium, and most of the places in Europe that will normally shoot a movie like this, where the facilities exist. So we ended up in the most southwesterly tip of Europe, which is Subculture, Portugal, simply because it was the only place where, at that time of year, where we figured we could fake up what looks like New England in late summer or autumn, and where also we could get access to alpacas.
Yeah.
The alpacas were a key part of my figuring. I kind of drew a line in the sand earlier on and said I won't make this movie unless it's going to have alpacas.
Yeah. Was there a reason for that? Like, did you have a lot of pressure from the studio to say, look, why don't you just do horses, or why don't you do cows? Why did you decide that alpacas had to be there?
Well, the original story is so well known. The basic premise of like a remote farm where a meteorite comes out of the sky and wham, hits the land, and a farmer in dungarees and a plaid shirt comes out and pokes the thing with a stick, and that you immediately think there should be cows, chickens, and a pig. So I was determined not to do any of those things. I really didn't want to show a scene where the meteor actually hits the ground. I didn't want to have like a hick come out and basically do the routine, and I thought, we can't have cows, we've got to have something else. And I wanted an animal that wasn't ideally suited to the place. I initially toyed with the idea of using Angora goats and having them making Angora sweaters, or the idea of having an ostrich farm. But ostriches are proportionally much more difficult to work with and to kick hard, whereas alpacas are more docile and easier animals to have on set.
Yep.
So they kind of rose to the top of the pile.
Yeah. Taking the horror and the sci-fi element out of the film for a moment, when you were sat down to work on the screenplay, did you do a lot of research into meteorites and also tried to find some of the stories that people have told here on Earth that have come across meteorite sites and things like that, like even with the supernatural involved?